Welcome in to Duval Daily presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thank you so much for tuning in. The Jaguars have just dropped their week 1 depth chart, taking on the Washington Commanders 1 p.m. in Washington, D.C. are the Jaguars for regular season week 1. Very exciting stuff. The NFL season is finally upon us. It's Tuesday, September 6th. We've got Thursday night football coming up this week. We've obviously got the Jaguars taking on the Commanders on Sunday. It's an exciting time to be a football fan. It's an exciting time to be someone who covers the NFL. I'm fired up for it. You can follow me on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo, Generation Jaguar at Generation Jag. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that notification bell so you don't miss a show on here. This is a live show right now. The Jaguars have just dropped their week 1 press release, which shares their week 1 depth chart. We're going to jump into it right now on this live show. I'm excited. Happy to have you all here. Gerald's checking in, says, caught the record prediction show. Looks spot on to me. If you guys missed that, I did do my Jaguars record prediction earlier. Have the Jaguars winning 7 games, including week 1 at Washington. But go check that out. Full record prediction video. You can find it on your YouTube feed or on your podcast feed, whichever you prescribe to or subscribe to. I do encourage you to hit the subscribe and notification bell on YouTube, though. We really are trying to grow the channel. I appreciate all y'all's support. Sean checks in, says Gen Jag, LFG. Hell yeah. John says 3 in a row today. Yeah, it's been busy, John. I'm with you. It's been a busy day. I'm excited for it, though. Excited to talk about this depth chart a little bit. I'm sure some of y'all have seen a little bit of it as it's been making its way around social media on Twitter and whatnot, but we will jump into it right now. Not a ton of surprises. There really aren't. There are some interesting things to pay attention to here on who's in the starting lineup, but nothing that should come as a huge surprise or shock to anyone out there. Juwan Taylor, starting right tackle, entering his 4th year with the Jaguars. He has started every game since being drafted by the Jaguars back in 2019. He has apparently held off Walker Little, at least for now, on the right side at right tackle for the Jaguars. I think I watched this battle a lot throughout camp, throughout the preseason. I was really locked into it. I think that was the biggest position battle. Daniel's checking in, says, best words ever. Welcome in. Love it. Love it, y'all. But yeah, I think this was the biggest position battle, bar none. Juwan Taylor versus Walker Little at right tackle. I don't think this is a horrible decision. I've been on record saying I think Walker Little is a better player, has a higher upside, and should be the starter. But I don't think this is a horrible decision. I think Juwan Taylor throughout training camp and the preseason has looked just as good, if not better, than Walker Little. And he's getting the opportunity to prove that he still belongs to start. Again, he started every game in his NFL career for the Jaguars. Brandon's checking in saying, Jordan, how are you? I'm doing well. I'm fired up, getting into this depth chart. Looking at captains earlier today too. I broke down all the different, the 5 captains, 2022 captains for the Jaguars. And then I also did my record prediction earlier. Go check all that stuff out. But yeah, Juwan Taylor starting at right tackle. Dustin says, are we disappointed in Walker Little for not getting the right tackle job? I don't want to say we're disappointed, and I don't know that this is going to be season long. Juwan Taylor, to be quite frank, has struggled a lot throughout his career, both with penalties and mental mistakes. I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be a season long thing. I'm not sure that it will be. But Juwan, looking at what happened since this regime has been installed, since Doug Peterson arrived in Jacksonville, I do think Juwan Taylor has perhaps outplayed Walker Little slightly, or at least been on par with Walker Little. And so I would understand going with the veteran. Roster construction side of it puzzles me a little bit because you do have Walker Little under contract for so much longer than Juwan Taylor, and Juwan Taylor's in the final year of his rookie deal. Do you not want to get Walker Little into the starting lineup at some point and really see what you have in him before you go into year 3 of his rookie deal? We'll see how it all plays out. But right now, Juwan Taylor is the starting right tackle. He was excellent during the preseason and training camp in pass protection. I think both he and Walker Little kind of leave a bit to be desired in the run game, especially when you're talking about this zone rushing scheme where you have to get out and move in space. I think both players kind of struggled to frame up some blocks against smaller, quicker, linebackers and safeties and corners. So you'll want to see that improve from both players, but it does look like at this point, Juwan Taylor is going to be in the starting lineup against the Washington Commanders. They won't face Chase Young, but they will face Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, Montez Sweat. Juwan Taylor will see Montez Sweat. Is that going to go well? I don't know. I'm not sold on Juwan Taylor. I do think he's looked better this preseason and training camp, but we've seen 3 years of what Juwan Taylor has been at this level, and to this point, it hasn't been good enough. And I'm not disappointed in Walker Little because I don't think Walker Little has done anything to lose this job, really. I think he's been very good in pass protection, which is what you care about the most. And both players have been fine at the point of attack in the run game. It's really when they've been working to the second level. So, no, I'm not disappointed in Walker Little. I think he very easily could have won this job, and I think he will be. Now that he's not the starter, I think he will be the swing tackle. He'll fill in at left tackle or right tackle if either starter goes down. And I think the Jaguars feel really good about where Juwan and Walker both are. I would have liked to see Walker Little in the starting lineup. I think you just want to get him out there, get him as much experience as possible, and just see what you've got in him. I think there's a lot of potential there. I think that he's a really good pass protector already. But we can move on from the right tackle job here. Gary says, I hope no more Juwan trade talk. George is saying, hydrate. I am pretty hydrated. I had some water before the show. Sean says, best swing tackle in the NFL. I guess we're talking about Walker Little there. I don't know if I would go that far because he certainly does lack some experience. But I do think, looking around the league, you're not going to find many more talented swing tackles than Walker Little. Gerald says you have to give the job to the guy who performed the best. Otherwise, you get dissension. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think you can just pick a player. You can't just pick a player because of the situation. He has to win the job. I agree with you. I don't think either player really separated themselves enough to say like if you went with Walker Little, I don't think there's any way that this team would look at it and be like, that was a terrible decision. I think they would respect it either way. I think that's a good thing. Brandon says, I'm so glad we got Adam Gotsis back, even though it's on the practice squad. Yeah, he is back on the active roster, as Gary said. Timmy Devil said Sweat. Yeah. Montez Sweat, he could be a tough time for both Juwan Taylor and Cam Robinson in this upcoming game. But again, not having to face Chase Young, who's recovering from his injury, best wishes to Chase Young. I'm a big fan of his game, but he's not playing in this game, and that's good news for the Jaguars. All right, so Ben Barch is starting at left guard. Not a surprise at all. But that was one of the position battles you were watching early in camp. At first, you had Tyler Shatley taking most of the reps with the first team at left guard. Ben Barch kind of ascended into that role a couple weeks ago, and he's held on to it. It looks like he's going into his third year with the team. He's gotten some valuable experience over the first 2 years of his career, and I think he looks like a starting NFL offensive lineman. We'll see how well he plays. I do think that Cole Van Lanen, who is listed as the backup right guard, might have a shot at some point to dethrone Ben Barch if Barch doesn't play up to the level that he can. But at this point, Ben Barch is the starting left guard, and I have no issue with that. He will have his hands full, and so will Luke Fortner, who is the starting center, a rookie, third-round pick. Luke Fortner is starting at center. He's been listed as the starting center all camp, so it comes as no surprise. He's a really smart kid, really strong football player. I'm excited to see him out there. But Ben Barch, Luke Fortner, Brandon Sheriff on the inside. Of course, Brandon Sheriff knows Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen and all those guys very well, having played with them and practiced against them for several years in Washington. But Ben Barch and Luke Fortner have a big test in front of them. So do Juwan Taylor and Cam Robinson. We'll see. We'll see very quickly if the Jaguars did enough this offseason to shore up their offensive line. They certainly could have made more major investments in this group than they did, or different investments in this group than they did. We'll see. We'll see this weekend real quick because Washington has a hell of a defensive front. Gerald said, just wonder how the new kicker is looking. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen much. I haven't been going to practice since the preseason ended, just with my schedule and how things have been working out here. Yeah, you've got Timmy Devil saying Kendrick Pryor is listed behind Marvin Jones, and that shouldn't really come as a surprise. He did align primarily on the outside for the Bengals throughout the preseason, and so he and Marvin Jones are listed on one side. You've got Christian Kirk and Jamal Agnew at slot, and then wide receivers on the other side, Zay Jones and Tim Jones. So that all lines up. That's nothing to be too surprised about, in my opinion, there, with Kendrick Pryor being the backup to Marvin Jones on that side. Yeah, we've got James Robinson or Travis Etienne as the starting running back for the Jaguars. That should come as no surprise. I do think that both of these players will be heavily involved in the offense, quite clearly. James Robinson has been cleared to play. Doug Peterson said, when asked yesterday, do you feel good about James Robinson playing on Sunday? He answered very simply, yes. So expect James Robinson to play on Sunday. I would expect him to not have a full workload, to be quite honest, in this one. I know he's healthy, but he has not had any in-game reps since he tore his Achilles in December. I know that he's healthy. I know that there's no risk of him going back out on the field, but you don't want to overdo it early on. He did not play at all in the preseason. He did participate in camp, and he did, take on a little contact in camp, but it's different. So you want to ease him back into the rigors of the regular season. I do think you'll see him carry the football. I think you'll see him in there a decent amount, but Travis Etienne's going to get a lot of run. Snoop Connor is still listed as the third running back. Again, he's the fifth round pick that the Jaguars traded up for in the 2022 NFL draft. And then JaMycal Hasty is listed as your fourth back. So I think each one of those running backs could play a role in this one. Hasty has not been on the team for very long, as he was just picked up last week, but he got cut from a crowded 49ers backfield. He's a player that's been effective in the NFL as kind of that scat back, third down type of back. So I think they've got a good group. They don't need to overdo it with James Robinson, but you will see him in this one. And I think throughout the season, you see James Robinson or Travis Etienne as the starter. I think that will really be based on what they want to do with their scripted plays to start games. Honestly, who's out there for the first snap will just depend on what they're trying to get done early in the game. Devin Lloyd, first round pick that the Jaguars traded up for, traded a second, a fourth, and a sixth to get up to 27 to take Devin Lloyd. He only played in one preseason game, missed most of the preseason and training camp with a hamstring. But he did play in that final preseason game against the Falcons. he is listed as the starting linebacker. So as long as there's no hiccups with that hamstring this week, he will be your starting linebacker opposite Foye Oluokun, or I should say next to Foye Oluokun. Those will be your two inside linebackers for the Jaguars in nickel and in base. Luke Fortner. I talked about him starting at center already. We've got Riley Patterson still locked in as the kicker right now. The kicker situation is one of those you got to monitor on a daily basis here in Jacksonville. This team has been moving kickers in and out of that building, with incredible haste. To be quite honest, James McCourt came in. He did really well. Wasn't good enough. They wanted Riley Patterson in the building, and so they went and got him. Jamal Agnew is, of course, listed as the starting kick and punt returner. He is one of the best in the league, if not the best. We all saw that last year when he was healthy. Looking at the way the depth chart is set up, they've got it listed as 12 starters on each side of the ball, which shows us on offense, it shows us 12 personnel with Chris Manhertz being the blocking tight end and 12 personnel, Evan Ingram being the move tight end. And it also shows us 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end on the field. So in 12 personnel, your starters would be Marvin Jones, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. One of those two would leave the field. With the amount of money the Jaguars are paying Christian Kirk, I would have to imagine Marvin Jones would probably leave the field most often. Just with the way the Jaguars have featured Zay Jones this offseason, and Christian Kirk being the $18 million man that he is, I don't think you have him leaving the field in 2 wide receiver sets and 12 personnel. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you've also got 12 starters listed. So you're looking at your base 3-4, which would not have that nickel corner. And then you've also got your nickel 4-2-5, which has Darius Williams in there as the starting nickel. So yeah, that's pretty much the rundown of the depth chart here. Not too much crazy stuff to talk about. Like I mentioned, I do think 11 and 12 personnel will be the featured personnel packages that the Jaguars use. And on the offensive side of the ball and on the defensive side of the ball, same thing with how the depth chart looks. I think 3-4 will be base still. And I think you'll have that kind of 4-2-5 look will be the most common nickel look for the Jaguars. I will say, we've talked about this. Behind Devon Hamilton at nose tackle, there is really no depth on the roster right now. Foley Fatukasi is a defensive end for the Jaguars. He has played nose tackle in the past throughout his career, so I think you would definitely see him shift down should something happen to Devon. But Doug Peterson and company just don't believe there's going to be that many reps for the big run-stuffing defensive tackles in the modern NFL. All right. Gerald says they really must have a lot of confidence in Fortner. They do, and it's not just the coaching staff. Trevor Lawrence has spoken highly of him. Brandon Sheriff spoke very highly of him yesterday. This is a guy who I had as a second-round valuation and evaluation in the NFL draft. He fell to the 3rd round. Jaguars took him at the top of the 3rd at 65 overall. He's very smart. He's athletic. He's hard-nosed, and he's a quick study. He's a hard worker. So I think the Jaguars have been very pleased with what they've seen from him, and he'll just continue to get better, in my opinion. Brandon says, I can't wait to see our dog Trevon Walker get Carson and cause more nightmares. Yeah, it is interesting. This isn't exactly our Jaguars versus Commanders preview, but it is the game that's coming up, and this is the Week 1 depth chart show, so I'll talk about it a little bit. Yeah, I think the fact that Doug Peterson and Press Taylor are so familiar with Carson Wentz, they mentioned that it doesn't really give them an advantage. At least that's what Press Taylor said a week or two ago when we were talking to him. But I don't believe that for a second. I think Carson Wentz and their knowledge of Carson Wentz and what he can and can't do is absolutely a benefit for the Jaguars in this contest. And yeah, I think Travon Walker, I'm excited to see him out there for the first time when it counts as well. He and Josh Allen, I think, are going to really have some fun this year. Jaggernaut says, hello, Jen Jag. The season is finally here. Yes, it is. 2 more sleeps before NFL football. Ready for it. Timmy says, right now, based on what I've seen, J-Rob still has the best vision of our running backs. ETN needs work following his block. Snoop has no vision. Okay. I agree that James Robinson has the best vision of all the running backs. I think that is one of his best traits. His vision is one of the reasons that he has been one of the more consistent running backs in the NFL over the last 2 years. It's one of the reasons he averaged 4.7 yards per carry last year on an offense that was atrocious, on an offense that had no rhythm and no direction. I think saying Snoop has no vision is not true at all. I think he showed good vision, good patience, and all of that stuff when he was running behind a group that was getting the job done. The Jaguars' offensive line played horrible football outside of Cole Van Lanen in that final preseason game, and Snoop had nowhere to run. I do not put that on Snoop. ETN needs work following his blocks is another comment here. I think that will come. I don't think that he has poor vision. I think what we saw in his game against the Steelers was you saw a couple plays where he, had good blocking. He hit the hole quickly. You had a few plays where the blocking broke down. And then you also had a couple plays where I think he showed a little rust and showed some jitters a little bit and did not hit the hole like he needed to. But I'm not concerned with that from a big picture view on Travis Etienne. I really am not. But yes, James Robinson still has the best vision on the team of any of the running backs. He has incredible vision, one of his best traits. Gerald says if the Jags want to be a decent team this year, the opener is the kind of game they need to win. I can't even remember the last regular season road win. Was it against the Raiders in 2019? Final game in Oakland? Was that what it was? Randy Marsh says, how much of Robinson will we see week 1? I've been talking about it. I would imagine if I had to put a number on it, I would guess he would get about 15 to 20 plays. That's not 15 to 20 carries or touches. That's snaps. I just don't think you want to overdo it. There's no reason when you do have Travis Etienne, you do have Snoop Connor, you do have JaMychal Hasty. You want to win games right now, but you want to peak at the end of the season. You need to get the job done throughout the season, but this game is not as important as games down the stretch, and certainly not if you get into the playoffs. You want James Robinson to be healthy, and rushing him back, and this wouldn't be rushing him back, but rushing him into a heavy workload, I don't think would be wise. I think you have to ease him in here. Randy says, do you think Travon gets a sack this week? Why not? He's been getting consistent pressure throughout the preseason and training camp. Why not? Gary says, what happened to Jaguars video productions lately? Happy hour drive time. I think they're back this week. I'm not really sure. I don't follow that stuff super well. Gerald says, do you think we'll see some surprises from the offense in game 1 that we didn't see in the preseason? Yeah, I do. I don't think you've seen anything from the Jaguars offense yet, and I don't think you've seen anything from their defense. Not from a player performance perspective, but looking at what they're going to do schematically. Yeah, I don't think that they have put anything out on the field. They've been very close to the vest all offseason about any information, regarding the depth chart, regarding schemes, all that stuff. They haven't been talking about it. They don't want to show it. I think they really want to come out and surprise Washington and even roll into the second week against another familiar opponent, the Colts, and be able to surprise them as well. Base mover. Hopefully we can see some snaps given to the rookies Tim Jones or Kendrick Pryor. So Tim Jones is not a rookie, but he is a first-year player. Will you see them get snaps on offense? I don't envision them being out there a lot. I do think they could have a few snaps here and there, but when you're looking at these receivers, it's going to be Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones out there the majority of the time. Jamal Agnew will find the field as well. I do think you'll see some Tim Jones and Kendrick Pryor. I just wouldn't expect them to be featured in the game plan, not at this juncture. Goder says, "What up? Just joined. Happy you're here. You've missed a lot." We've been talking about the Jaguars week 1 depth chart here. Brandon, yeah, he says Doug said during the preseason he wanted to keep it vanilla. He did want to keep it vanilla, and he did. I really think that, and not that there was, I don't think that the play calling was like ugly during the preseason for the most part. I think there were a few moments that Doug would have liked back, a few play calls that Doug would have liked back, but it's definitely going to be a lot more to the offense than we've seen so far, and the defense. I think the Jaguars defense, they have not been as aggressive as I would have expected, and again, I think part of that is due to them wanting to keep it vanilla throughout the preseason and training camp. Rainey says, "Do you think we have an advantage with Peterson having coached against Washington, or does it not really move the needle in your eyes?" I think it is fascinating, this matchup, because Doug Peterson has coached a lot of games against Ron Rivera, not only Eagles versus Commanders, but also Eagles versus Panthers. They played when Ron Rivera was the head coach there as well. Not a ton, but I think they've played each other over 5 times as head coaches. So that is really interesting. Just the familiarity there between the two head coaches and how they're going to scheme things up. And then you've also got Jack Del Rio as the Commanders' defensive coordinator, which is always going to be interesting, having good old Jack Del Rio take on the Jaguars. Do I think is an advantage? I think the advantage is Doug Peterson being, and Press Taylor being so knowledgeable about Carson Wentz and what he can and cannot do on the football field, what works for him and what does not work for him. Because not only was Press on staff in Philly, he was with Carson Wentz in Indianapolis last year in Indy. I think it's an advantage. Now, Press Taylor totally downplayed that. Press Taylor last week, he said he doesn't really think there's an advantage at all. I don't believe that. I think that is him being a good sport there and not wanting to reveal anything. Goder says, "I would really like to get another free agent like Ndamukong Suh, OBJ." Yeah, I hear you. See Landon Collins there. That doesn't really move the needle for me. But yeah, if you could get another, I think the Jaguars need another nose tackle or someone who can play nose tackle. I just think you are one injury away from having serious issues with your interior depth. Foley Fatukasi, he hasn't been fully healthy. He's been dealing with a calf that has popped up twice throughout the preseason and training camp. Devon Hamilton's the starter there, but if he goes down, I think you're nervous there. So I think somebody who can play nose tackle, somebody who can play inside. Eric said, "Just joins. Did Doug announce the starting right tackle?" So I'll tell you what we've got. Doug has not announced this, but the Jaguars released their first depth chart in their press release just about an hour ago. And Juwan Taylor is the starting right tackle. Ben Barch is the starting left guard. I'm just going through the ones that are kind of interesting or that were position battles. James Robinson or Travis Etienne is their starter. Devin Lloyd at inside linebacker next to Foye Luke, and Luke Fortner at center. Riley Patterson at kicker. So those are the developments from the depth chart release there. Goder says Jason Pierre-Paul is also available. Yeah, I like the idea of Jason Pierre-Paul in Jacksonville. Todd Todd Bowles was the defensive coordinator down there in Tampa. Now he's the head coach. JPP played with him. Mike Caldwell is going to bring a similar brand of defense here as the defensive coordinator for the Jaguars. I think that makes sense, but I really think he's not the depth they need right now. I don't think it would hurt to bring him in at all. I'd be all for it. But when I'm talking about a need, I think the need is on the interior. Just some depth, somebody who can step in and play. Now, they do have Israel Antwine on the practice squad right now. So I do think that alleviates that issue a little bit because you could just call him up if you need to, and he played very well throughout training camp in the preseason. DTWD says, should I keep Zay Jones on my fantasy football bench? Maybe it could be a breakout. Are you saying keep him instead of dropping him? Yes, I would keep him on your bench right now. He is the Jaguars' starting X receiver. I think if you believe in Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence, and you believe in what you've seen in limited snaps throughout the preseason, and I've certainly seen it throughout training camp, they have good chemistry. They're playing well together. They seem to really get each other. Zay Jones and Trevor Lawrence. I definitely would not cut him. I'm not saying you should throw him in the starting lineup just yet. I'm actually in a fantasy league where I got him in the last round of the draft, Zay Jones. I'm not putting him in the starting lineup yet, but I am keeping him on the bench. He's definitely a hold for me. Brandon says, would JPP want to play here or go to contender? Yeah, he is definitely on the older side of things. Would he want to play in Jacksonville? I think if you offered him, decent little chunk of change, he'd probably want to play. Randy says, completely unrelated question. What was your reaction to the LSU FSU ending? Was that not Les Miles' way to end a game? Yeah. What a game. What a couple games for fans of football in the Sunshine State this weekend. I don't even know what to say about the end of that game. That was unbelievable. That's what I would say about it. Eric says, I was surprised to see the battling line or the betting line, Washington at -3. I saw -3.5. Is this a testament to people just not realizing how improved the Jags are, or is it the truth and we're all just wearing teal too much? No, I think it's the truth. I think when you look at the NFL and you look at NFL betting, home teams get a little bump there, and it's usually about 3 points. So when you look at it that way, this game is pretty much a push. If it was neutral site, I think it would be a push. If it was in Jacksonville, the Jaguars might have the slight advantage in the betting lines here. But yeah, I picked the Jaguars to win this game. I don't think this is a gimme. Commanders fans, people that cover the Commanders, I think they're looking at this as a game that they should win. Now, I have seen a fair amount of national media folks picking the Jaguars in this one, not against the spread, but just straight up. In fact, the majority that I have seen are picking the Jaguars to win this game. I'm also picking the Jaguars to win this game. I think they have a more complete team. I think they are going to have, just an advantage at the quarterback position. That's going to help them finish this game. And I do think Doug Peterson's going to outcoach Ron Rivera. We'll see how it works out. Gerald says, living out of state, I don't get the Jags games with DirecTV NFL package free this year. I get to see the Jags. Hell yeah, excited for you, Gerald. Brandon says, my hometown Marshall plays Notre Dame this weekend. It's going to be a massacre. Well, we'll see. Notre Dame's defense is certainly looking pretty good at this point. Jesus' King checks in, says the offensive line concerns me at left guard, center, and right tackle. I'll say this. I think the Jaguars could have done more to shore up their offensive line this year. And again, thank you so much for the super chat there, Jesus is King. If I was constructing this roster, a lot more of the resources that we had this offseason would have gone towards the offensive line. And that's not me burying the decisions that they did make. I like a lot of the players the Jaguars have brought in this year. I think they're going to help out greatly. But yeah, I agree that they could have done more along the offensive front or made different decisions along the offensive front. But I really like Luke Fortner at center, and I really like Tyler Shatley as your backup center. I don't know how quickly or how quickly Luke Fortner will play to his ceiling, how long it'll take for him to get there, but he's going to be a good football player in the NFL. Luke Fortner is. Ben Barch, I'm not super high on at left guard. I do think he's fine, but the fact that Cole Van Lanen got brought in, and I think he's a player that just knows how to get the job done no matter where he's playing. He played left tackle in college. He's played right tackle. He's played guard. I think that can give you some solace. And the fact that Walker Little's right there waiting in the wings if Juwan Taylor can't get the job done should also give you solace. So I'm not as concerned as perhaps you are, Jesus is King there, but I do understand your concern, and I do understand the idea that they could have done more to make sure that Trevor Lawrence is protected. And to be quite frank, the offensive line has not looked good run blocking so far this year in the preseason, which of course, it's the preseason. They haven't had a lot of reps together yet, not a lot of time together, but what we have seen has not looked great. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out here week 1 against a Washington front that has a lot of talent. DTWD says, thank you. He was my very last pick last night, and I'm feeling good about it too. Again, talking about Zay Jones here. I'm keeping him on my bench. I also got James Robinson in the late round. I'm hoping he will be a good stash also. Oh, yeah, certainly. Travis Etienne's the more exciting, younger, flashier back with the home run threat potential, but the discount that you're getting a healthy James Robinson at to start the season in fantasy football right now, I think provides more value than where you have to get Travis Etienne in fantasy football drafts. Jaggernaut says, I think after our first 4 games, our Jags will have peaked some eyebrows. Yeah, I agree. I think this is a team that is going to be competitive throughout the season. If you didn't look at my record prediction, I have them going 7-10. The biggest reason I don't have them finishing 500 or better is because of the AFC West and the Tennessee Titans. That's it right there. Jaggernaut says improved offense and suffocating front seven will make the league pay attention. Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. Even if this team does not make the playoffs in 2022, it'll be a much more fun team to watch. Gerald says, I still worry about screenplays on defense. Yeah, I can't blame you for that. Not one bit. I mean, it's been ugly. The Jaguars have not figured out how to stop screens over the last decade or so, maybe even longer. Will Mike Caldwell be the coach that gets the job done when it comes to stopping the screen? We'll find out. Brandon says, I'm not with it today. I thought Ken was like, you're all good, Brandon. Don't worry about it. We all have those days. It's been a long Tuesday, right? After a long weekend. It's been tough. You're all good. DGWD says we can go 2-0. I'm hoping against Commanders and come back home against the Colts. Great momentum starting 2-0. Be nice to see healthy J-Rob with Etienne in a game. Yeah, that's what I predict to happen. I think they could very easily lose either of those games. Jesus is King says, yeah, we looked terrible run blocking. And again, I think with more reps, that could quickly turn around. I think the talent is there to run block for this group. I think you have the right coaching. I think you have the right scheme. I think players that fit the scheme, but they've got to show improvement there. Dustin says, can we get a Duval? You can always get one from me, Dustin. You can count on that. Joel Patterson says, James Robinson sees the running lane better than Etienne. I agree. James Robinson's, one of his best traits is his vision. I think his contact balance is excellent as well. I think he has good power. I think he has a very nice lateral cut. But vision is right up there among the most important and critical traits that that James Robinson possesses. Justin says, with 7 wins, would we still be a top 10 draft pick? It's a good question. Let's look up the 2022 NFL draft order. Or 2021. No, 2022. See, I'm getting confused out here too, fellas. Don't worry about it. All right. So the Seahawks would have drafted 10th. What was their record? They were 7-10. So you'd be borderline top 10. You could be top 10. Just depends on how the season goes around the rest of the league. But it would be close to top 10. I will say this. I think and I didn't say this earlier on the record prediction. I think the Jaguars are closer to being a playoff team than a top 5 team. And I know there's a fine line in between being close to making the playoffs and being top 5, but I think that they will be closer to the playoffs than the top 5. That's my bold prediction for this episode. How about that? DTWD says AFC West is tough. Maybe we can squeeze a W out one of those 4 games like we did Buffalo last year. Yeah, I think they could beat Denver or the Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders. I think the most likely win. I mean, the Jaguars have their best record anywhere over the last decade has been in London. Weirdly enough, they have a winning record now in London, but I just think the Raiders traveling to Jacksonville the week after that, I think the Jags might pick up that win, and they might win in London. You know, they beat the Dolphins in London last year. But I do not see them going to LA and beating the Chargers. I do not see them going to Kansas City and winning in Arrowhead. Last time they played in Arrowhead was the beginning of the end of the Blake Bortles era. I was at that game. Not pretty stuff. It was a little chilly. It was a little rainy. And it was a whole lot of turnovers for Blake Bortles in that one. Bobby says, sup, Jordan. Keep up the great content. Thank you so much for the support. Appreciate all y'all for being here. Brandon says, I might be expecting too much, but I got us either going 8-9 or 9-8. I don't think that's too much. I really think that's well within the realm of possibilities. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jaguars make the playoffs. I think they're closer to being a playoff team than a doormat team. I think they have the coaching. I think they have the talent, and they should have the talent, by the way, right? They've had 2 top overall picks the last 2 years. They have spent to the salary cap. They're a little cash strapped right now. They're a team that has spent a lot of money, spent a record amount of money this offseason. So yeah, this is a team that should be competitive. Eric says, predict what percentage of team carries ETM gets this season. He says, I'm guessing 42%. That's so tough because I think over the first couple weeks, he could get a lot more than James Robinson just because of, easing James Robinson back in. I would say ETN will get 45%. How about that? Bobby says, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much, Bobby. Joel says 2017, they predicted the Jags to have 6 wins, end up 10-6. Absolutely. Like I said, when I predicted 7 games, I don't think that that's definitely what's going to happen. That's just my prediction. I think that because of the youth, because of the newness of everything, because of playing the AFC West, because of having to face your demons and the Texans and Titans, I see 7 wins is what I see. But the range of outcomes, I think it could be 5 wins to 10 wins. I really do. I think this team has one of the greatest range of outcomes of any team in the NFL this year. Because if Trevor Lawrence gets unlocked by Doug Peterson, the sky is the limit. I think the defense is going to be good. It's going to be fun. I can't wait to see how it shapes out. DTWD, I know it's me being excited, but I really feel there's a possibility of winning 9 or 10. No, I agree with you. I just mentioned it. Yeah. Gerald says, with that stacked AFC West and AFC overall, we almost have to win the division to make the playoffs. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I do not think there will be two representatives from the AFC South in this playoff. I don't. I mean, the Colts and Titans could do it, or the Jags sneak in. Maybe the Colts or Titans could sneak in, but I'm guessing that there's going to be one AFC South playoff team this year. Brandon says maybe we can convince Jackson Mahomes to make a bunch of TikToks and hopefully distract Patrick. Not a bad strategy, although he's been dealing with that Jackson Mahomes drama, and he's been doing just fine. So Dustin says, any chance you think J-Rob gets 600 plus yards and 5 touchdowns in the season? Absolutely. Absolutely. I would expect him to eclipse those numbers. Brandon says, I hope Laquan Treadwell and Visca have a good year with the Patriots and Panthers. I was kind of hoping we could have stashed Treadwell on the practice squad. Yeah. I really wish both of those guys the best as well. I do not blame the Jaguars for completely moving on from Treadwell, but I'm really happy to see him land in New England. There's not a harder working, more passionate player in the league than Laquan Treadwell. Former first round pick who has really had to bust his ass to keep himself in the league. Zach is whack says, what up, fellas? How late am I? You're 46 minutes late, Zach. How dare you? No, happy to have you here. You're going to have to go back and check in on most of everything because we're about to wrap it up. Joel says, how can I support the channel? Glad you asked. You can support the channel by becoming a channel member, which there's a link to in the description below. You can just check out our YouTube page as well. You can go check ginjag.com. We have a bunch of shirts, hats, a lot of fun Duval gear that you can be proud to show your support of this town and this team. So those are the two easiest ways to go check things out. But yeah, that is going to do it. I really appreciate everyone for tuning in. It's been a really good show. Happy to talk some Jaguars depth chart. If you did miss it, I'll just quickly recap it. Juwan Taylor is starting at right tackle. Ben Barch starting at left guard. It'll be James Robinson or Travis Etienne in the starting lineup at running back, with Snoop Connor in third and Jamichael Hasty fourth. Devin Lloyd starting at inside linebacker next to Foye Oluokun. Riley Patterson is locked in at kicker for the moment. Jamal Agnew is listed as a starting kick and punt returner. No surprise, but it's good to see him back healthy. And, he's one of the most dangerous returnmen in the league, if not the most dangerous. You're going to see base 3-4 on defense, 4-2-5 in the nickel for the most part. I think your two biggest offensive sets is going to be 12 personnel with 2 tight ends and 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, and 1 tight end. All right, y'all. This probably will be the last Duval Daily of Tuesday, September 6th, our third show of the day here. Appreciate you so much. Hit me up on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. You can follow Generation Jaguar at Generation Jag. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Thanks so much, Duval.